I'm here to work, gentlemen and ladies. Not even in that order. If I don't allow myself room for growth, I'm gonna start floating up there like everybody else. Sleep less, run more, work out more, feel better, eat good, rest more. Yeah, I quit drinking, but I can pick that up back again. Literally, what do you guys think? When I'm hurt, I love it. I love that feeling because it's real. Everything else, happiness could be fake, crying could be fake, but pain? Yeah, that's cool. I'm done.
You know the classic Cinderella story about being in the right place at the right time? The guy that got snatched off the street and handed an acting career just because he had the right look? Or the girl that just happened to meet the love of her life in the airport after missing her flight? Or how about the injured star high school athlete who just happened to have a coach who refused to let him succumb to a life of mediocrity after no college would give him a chance? Alright, that last one's from Friday Night Lights. What I'm getting at is that there are people that are magnets for success. They end up winning even when they do everything in their power to lose. But for every yin, there must be a yang. And for every person that trips into opportunities, there exists a person that trips over them. Tony Ferguson is one such person. But there is a beauty to being the underdog. Nobody wants to hear a story where everything goes right for the hero. There's got to be pain, anger, sadness, and at times hilarity. Struggle is life seasoning. It breeds character. And if there's one word that describes Tony Ferguson perfectly, it's character. Not character as in one's temperament or constitution, but a character. As in, I don't know what this guy's problem is, but I can't stop watching. And that's where I want to start with Tony's story. His antics. Because why not? It's not like his story has a traditional beginning, middle, and end. There's no payoff, no big finale. It's just a collection of funny, weird, and occasionally sad events that eventually bring us into the present day. So let's begin.
I don't know if you guys see my pages and stuff, but we had a bear that was around our camp, right? And so I ended up deciding to go and track it down. So we found his water hole, we found everything else. Like, I'm a hunter, you guys don't really realize that. I started hunting when I was little, but I just don't like it. I like to track. And Bobby, I utilized this whole entire camp to be like a sniper. You gotta find your in, you gotta find your out, and you gotta have your route, and you have to make sure that you're gonna get the job done.
What'd you think of that? Didn't make much sense, did it? That's the beauty of a Tony Ferguson interview. He's almost always unhappy and only vaguely makes sense because his sentences often contain two or more ideas that are difficult to connect coherently. For example, Tony could easily say something along the lines of, I used to plant flowers in Nepal. That's what you guys don't know about me. I know patterns, floral patterns, flower power, motherfucker. Or maybe something like this.
I got kicked in the leg. It hurt a little bit, but I walked it off. When I got kicked in the leg and I smiled, that was real. It did not hurt.
The man is undeniably a quote machine, and over time, these types of sound bites combined with quirky behaviors like kicking metal poles or performing Wing Chun moves on wooden dummies manifested a cult following. Tony became the guy that people watched just to see what he would do or say next. Eventually, his weirdness turned him into a mixed martial arts meme of sorts with the Tony Ferguson is the type of guy trend where fans would make up absurd scenarios and attribute them to Tony. Things like, Tony Ferguson's the type of guy to wake everyone up to tell them that he's going to bed, or Tony Ferguson's the type of guy to call his mother to tell her she loves him, or Tony Ferguson's the type of guy to shadowbox at a funeral. Tony was no joke as a fighter though. His ridiculous behavior was juxtaposed with incredible performances inside of the octagon. Between the years of 2013 and 2019, he went on a 12-fight winning streak, the second longest in lightweight history and 8th longest within the UFC as a whole. He was able to run through names like former Strikeforce lightweight champion Josh the Punk Thompson, former UFC lightweight champion Anthony Showtime Pettis, and former UFC lightweight champion Rafael Dos Anjos. What made his run even more remarkable was the way in which he dispatched his opponents. He would unleash a non-stop barrage of unorthodox strikes, often involving elbows, and combine them with seemingly endless cardio, which usually resulted in the octagon resembling a butcher shop after the fight was over. This style perfectly complemented his nickname, El Cucuy, which is a mythical monstrous creature that punishes those that have done wrong, popular in a lot of Spanish-speaking cultures. It's similar to what we in America know as the boogeyman. Through his efforts, Tony was eventually able to capture the UFC interim lightweight title in 2017, but was subsequently stripped due to suffering an injury leading up to a fight with then champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. Speaking of Khabib, he plays a large part in Tony's story. As the top two names in the lightweight division, the two were scheduled to fight on 5 separate occasions, with each one falling through due to increasingly preposterous circumstances. The first time the pair was matched up was in 2015, which ended with Khabib pulling out due to a rib injury. Next, they were slated to meet in 2016, this time with Tony pulling out due to having blood in his lung. The following year, the two were matched up yet again, and despite some brief back and forth over finances, with Tony demanding to be paid the same exact amount as Khabib, a date was set for March 4th. On March 3rd, the day before the event, Khabib was hospitalized due to complications with his weight cut and the fight fell through yet again. In 2018, the UFC decided to give it a shot once more, and the fight was nixed again. This time due to Tony, no joke, tripping over some wires prior to a pre-fight media obligation and injuring his collateral fibular ligament. The final cancellation happened in 2020, this time due to a worldwide pandemic. I remember the sentiment at the time being that the fight was legitimately cursed, and if the UFC tried to make it again, it might lead to the end of the world. It really did seem like this glitch in the Matrix moment where the two just weren't meant to fight, and no matter how many times they planned it, something would always get in the way. In retrospect, I'm almost glad that the fight never went down, because now it gets to live on in infamy as one of the greatest what could have beens in UFC history. Had the two actually met, there's little to no chance that it would have lived up to the hype. Just based on their fighting styles, Khabib most likely would have smothered and neutralized Tony, and that would have been that. It's kind of like what happened with Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. It was built up for years as this epic meeting of the two best welterweights on the planet, and one of them just ended up getting pulverized. Don't get me wrong, it was still shocking and awesome, but definitely not what it was hyped up to be. But that's not to say that Tony and Khabib was a complete bust. We might have never gotten the payoff we wanted, but the build-up was still something extremely special. Khabib played the perfect straight man to Tony's madness, and the interactions between the two were beyond hilarious. One of the best examples of that is the UFC 223 media conference call, where for a period of almost an hour, the two went back and forth in some of the most unintentionally gut-busting banter ever recorded. It started off with a bang when Tony called Khabib fat on the very first question.
10 days before weigh-in, I feel perfect. Don't worry about my weight cut, guys. And I will show 155 weight, and next day I'm gonna show my performance. Fat.
Then Khabib starts with the name calling and proceeds to tell Tony that he doesn't understand his English several times.
To be honest, I didn't understand your English. You know, you talk like stupid guy. But I didn't understand what you're talking about. You're like stupid. You know, like your mind is like stupid.
Yeah, I'm crazy.
When I go when we go to the cage, I'm gonna explain to you.
Hey, than you, and my conditioning's better than you.
You funny guy, Tony. You funny guy. You stupid funny guy. You know, nobody understands you.
At some point, Tony calls Khabib a cake eater in reference to a rumor of him eating tiramisu the night before his failed weight cut in 2017, then proceeds to question his nickname.
He's a silver spoon-fed cake eater.
Why?
You call yourself an eagle, but you ain't got no wings.
Well, Khabib calls Tony jealous and offers to ask the UFC's official sponsor at the time, Reebok, to design Tony a special shoe.
Why, you jealous about they not like me? You jealous about this? No. They can make you shoes like put like interim lightweight champ, Tony Ferguson. You want this?
I can't even hear you. I'm working out right now.
You're working out. You on the phone. What are you talking about?
All in all, the two played off each other perfectly, and there's plenty of material to binge on if you ever feel short on entertainment.
This kid's a bully. He's never been in a street fight, never actually been thrown into a trash can or any kind of like that. So now you're with somebody that you don't want to. I don't have to bring this
sunglasses. In street fight, I can eat. You understand?
No,
who are you? You never fight in street. You American guy. In American, you cannot fight in street.
There we go.
I am from real mountain. I can eat you in street
Here we
fight.
go.
Unfortunately for Tony, the failed Khabib fight led to him setting a very different type of record. After losing a brutal fight to Justin Gaethje in 2020, he proceeded to lose 5 more times and ended up tying the record for longest losing streak in UFC history. Tony's the type of guy to go on a losing streak to beat his winning streak. No? Lame? I tried. I hope this gave you a good idea of Tony's public persona. He's both a legitimate fighter and a meme. People want to see his interviews just as much as they want to see him fight because he's incredibly entertaining in both settings. Now the following half of the video is going to get dark in some parts because I'm going to explore Tony's issues with alcohol as well as his mental health crisis in 2019. I think both tend to not get taken as seriously as they should because Tony's public behavior is so odd that everything just gets attributed to his quirks, but some things he's done have been concerning in a completely unironic way. And the earliest hint we received that Tony might not be completely okay is when he first appeared on our TV screens on The Ultimate Fighter. In 2011, heavyweights Brock Lesnar and Junior Dos Santos coached the 13th season of The Ultimate Fighter. Just like in the previous seasons, the two were supposed to meet in the octagon once it was over, but Lesnar ended up pulling out of the fight due to his ongoing struggle with the gastrointestinal disease diverticulitis. The season itself wasn't spectacular, the talent pool was extremely shallow, and while Tough was yet to completely jump the shark, it was slowly but surely getting there. With that said, Tony Ferguson was both the winner and the standout talent of the season, finishing all 4 of his opponents by either a KO KO or TKO to win the coveted UFC contract, as well as secure the Knockout of the Night bonus at the live finale. Of course, the main thing most remember from that season is Tony's blackout drunk outburst directed at housemate Charlie Rader, who made the mistake of jokingly pouring a glass of water on Tony's head when the two were messing around. Tony turned everyone in the house against him when he repeatedly berated Charlie, asking, "Where's your kid?" in reference to the ongoing custody battle that he was involved in.
Where's your kid at? Where's your kid at? Where's your kid at? Don't say it. Hey, where's your kid at?
Now, I have some thoughts on this situation. First of all, blacking out to the point of not remembering anything the next day is a red flag when it comes to Tony's relationship with alcohol, but I'll get to that in a second. Which should have been a pretty clear-cut situation of Tony being completely in the wrong turned into me actually wanting to take his side. Let me explain. The morning after the incident, there was a clear tension in the house, which led to Tony apologizing to Charlie as well as everyone else in the house and explaining that he doesn't remember anything that happened the previous night. Now, for some context, Tony was going to be fighting a guy named Chuck O'Neal next, and this guy Chuck decided to turn this incident into his personal crusade for righteousness. I don't want any issues with monetization, so I'll just do my best to reenact what that sounded like. Dude, honestly, I wasn't super stoked to punch Tony in the face before, but now, bro, now I'm super motivated. I'm gonna make sure that his dreams don't come true. I'm gonna steal his dreams, bro. I know that he apologized, but I feel like it wasn't even heartfelt, bro. And that's just not how I get down. Not in my Christian neighborhood. I might have taken some liberties with the word track, but you get the gist. The thing that really annoyed me about the reaction to Tony's outburst is that the level of outrage felt completely fabricated. It's like, okay, yes, he was a drunk and said some hurtful things. He apologized, so move on, or don't, but stop acting like you're just so flabbergasted and can't even fathom how somebody could say something so hurtful while being in a barely coherent state in the middle of an extremely high-stress situation. It is what it is. But that leads me to something I want to mention before delving any deeper into Tony's issues. It's sometimes difficult to understand whether his sanity is slipping or if he's just being an ass, because despite the fact that his behavior is oftentimes romanticized and memed, he's not really that nice of a guy. In fact, 9 times out of 10, he's a straight up like this interaction with former UFC heavyweight champion Fabricio Verdum.
I don't understand you. What are you talking about? Shut up before I ankle pick you. Anyways.
The internet collectively had a great big laugh over Tony telling the heavyweight that he'll ankle pick him, and that's all well and good. But what most people missed was that Tony rudely cut off Verdum while both were given an interview.
It's shiny, it's awesome. It's cool. It's a piece of hardware that I can get for my baby boy.
Porque eu não comi nada antes.
You know, absolutely. Hold on, I'm talking, brother.
Então, vai te fuder, vai tomar no teu cu, meu.
What I'm trying to say is...
O problema é teu.
Then proceeded to trash talk him in Spanish, which he apparently barely speaks.
Vai tomar no teu cu,
Cuando yo estoy hablando, necesita cállate.
Es tu problema.
And when things started getting real, resorted to the "you're a big guy and I'm a little guy" tactic.
Pô, pau no cu, vai te fuder comigo, vão falar assim, ó, pai.
Big guy, right?
É big guy é isso aí mesmo. Não, falei que não.
Tony has a chip on his shoulder, which seems to manifest as a standoffish personality where he interacts with people as if he's constantly under attack, and it might stem from his childhood where he moved from California to Michigan. Ferguson is actually his stepfather's last name. Tony is of Mexican descent, and his original name is Anthony Armand Padilla. During his stint on The Ultimate Fighter, he brought up how out of place he felt growing up in Michigan due to his ethnicity, and that he was known in his school as, quote, the little Mexican with the big ears. But this wouldn't be the last time that he referenced being Mexican in a negative light. In the media phone call with Khabib that I mentioned earlier, he said this in response to Khabib asking if he was cleaning due to sounding out of breath.
What you do? You clean some house? Hey, you clean some house or what you do?
Yeah, like a Mexican dude, that's what I am. You know what I've been called every name in the book, and everything that you say to me with big ears and I'm losing my hair, I don't get two, man.
He also brought it up in this interview with Daniel Cormier.
But, you know, I'm Mexican, you know what I mean? I'm not going to say that everybody treats me like because I'm Mexican. But I'm going to be real, I haven't had the fair treatment that everybody else has had for a very long time.
That early childhood bullying might be something that he just never quite got over and comes out as intense defensiveness or an underdog complex. Maybe. I tend to go down rabbit holes and make assumptions sometimes, and I have to remind myself that I'm not a psychologist. I do have to say that some things Tony has done cannot be excused as just that. In 2019, Tony's wife Christina Ferguson made a frantic phone call to the authorities and requested a restraining order on her husband.
Okay, I just want to explain one thing. I actually left the location with my son. I was not comfortable with it anymore.
Okay.
He is a professional fighter.
Okay, and is he there by himself or is there anyone else there?
No, he's there by himself, just the dogs. But he's there by himself.
And it's your husband?
Yeah, it's my husband.
What's
so that's
his
what I'm
name?
saying. I just want to let you guys know he's a professional fighter because, one, I don't want no cop to get injured.
Christina eventually dropped the restraining order, and most fans, while concerned, ended up moving past the incident relatively quickly. Some fighters showed support, including Conor McGregor, and it was generally treated as something weird that happened but was a private matter and didn't need to be rehashed. Tony himself didn't seem to want to talk about it.
You seem to be in really great spirits. I commend you for going headfirst into some mental health issues and working through that. It takes a lot of courage as a professional athlete, especially. A lot of people look up to you. I was giving you props. I was just wondering.
The advice. Next question.
I wasn't giving you advice, sir. Sorry. Okay.
And the details of what happened were seldom looked into. It was just something about Tony hearing things in his walls. And I was surprised to learn that there was a lot of first-hand information about it available online. And reading through it, it seems a lot more serious than was initially reported. For one, Tony believed that his at the time 2-year-old son was Jesus Christ. He also stood over his wife in the middle of the night and accused her of being a witch. He believed that a lunar eclipse was going to cause a flood to the point of purchasing a life raft and driving himself and his family 111 miles away from their home. He believed that there were tracking devices all over the house and would physically destroy his surroundings in an attempt to find them. Here's a picture of what that looked like when Christina and her father came to pick him up to drive him to an appointment for a mental health evaluation. And Christina was on record telling police that Tony's behavior was so paranoid and bizarre that she feared for the lives of everyone in the house, including him. What I found really interesting was that she also stated that Tony was kicked off a flight in 2011 after winning his season of The Ultimate Fighter when going to visit his parents in Michigan. Apparently, that was the first time she noticed him losing touch with reality, and it seemed to be directly triggered by periods of heavy alcohol consumption. At some point, he was even prescribed risperidone, which is a medication used to treat bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. And maybe I'm just getting softer with age, or maybe I don't understand the grind set or what it takes to be a fighter, but to me that's incredibly concerning because Tony is now 39 years old and he's no longer the competitor that he once was. And even if the 2019 incident is the last time that Tony has a mental health crisis, he's not even in the UFC rankings anymore. He's probably never going to be champion, so this road that he's on is just going to lead to more and more heartbreak and physical deterioration that can't possibly be good for his already compromised mental health and apparent tendency to self-medicate with alcohol. Just this year, he got a DUI charge after flipping his car on the way home from the club. What makes this even sadder is that fighting isn't the end-all be-all to who Tony is as a person. He's not one of those guys that's got nothing to lose, at least not anymore. He's a father to 2 boys and according to both his wife's and his social media posts, extremely active in their lives. From the outside looking in, he seems like a great dad. In 5, 10, 15, 20 years, the fans will have moved on and Tony will just be another chapter in the constantly evolving history of mixed martial arts. He'll be another Ken Shamrock or Mark Coleman or Dan Severn. The newer fans will just look at him as one of those irrelevant old school fighters from way back when. That's just how the game goes. So with that in mind, why continue to put both your mental and physical health on the line? Because let's face it, this is a competition and you're only as good as your last fight. And while he is losing relevancy as a fighter with every outing, Tony Ferguson is the type of guy that will never stop being relevant to his family.